I'm a security officer hired to protect an estate. The forest has eyes. By Redditor, Forest has eyes. Hi. I'm Nolan. I've worked in this field for a long time, well, I guess somewhat literally, but more so metaphorically. I'm a sort of private security free agent by trade, you see, or at least that's the sort of title I've given myself. I'm a taller, more athletic Paul Blart with a chip on his shoulder, an actual gun in my holster. And instead of working for an official company, I'm just some guy that gets paid by people to guard their shit, them, or general square mile footage. I'm a city slicker. I like concrete, bright skyscrapers, and several hundreds of people within my general vicinity at all times. I've usually only accepted small jobs, short-time security, but recently I got an interesting offer. A small-time tycoon, rich guy, looks like he's been washing his hair in liquidated money, offered me a job. Guard my plot of land, the house on said land, my son, me, all my possessions, and get paid enough money annually to have your 401k before your hair even starts to think about turning gray. Not a bad offer, but said land was deep in southern woods. Now you're gonna laugh. I've worked in the private security, glorified mercenary take a gun and guard door bullshit work for a while. I've been online. I've heard enough stories. The woods are a place you don't fuck with. Miles of dense woods drowning any person in. A place where things have dwelled for a while. Point is, if I were gonna spend a few tens of millions on a compound, dropping it dead in Missouri, is it? I know it's dead on state borders. Ah well. Dropping it in Skinwalker City woods. The air around here is so thick with pine trees, I swear, smells like someone trying to blot out their new car smell with a cheap air freshener. Except the smell is more genuine. You know when you feel the scent is so pungent, you can almost cut it with a knife? What it felt like stepping out of the man's squeaky SUV, in front of his estate house, as he called it. You know that one place in Argentina? The one where the weird side of the internet says Hitler hid after he fled on a wild goose chase down the Atlantic? Looked similar to that, almost identical actually, just give it several hundred light fixtures, shiny new windows, and a bit of a trim up. Boom, the Kazimoth estate house. Not a lot stood out to me, all the light, maybe the sort of fear of the dark. Turn on all the lamps in the house, shit we did as a kid, but on a large scale because you're surrounded by miles of woods. What did seem a bit strange to me though were a few things. The place had a perimeter wall. Understandable, a number of threats such as bears, wolves, hell, the occasional freakazoid in the woods with a bear could be a cause for alarm. What did seem strange to me was how jagged the pikes were, and the fact that they were wrapped in a whole line of razor wire and barbed wire, with light fixtures pointing outside towards the woods. A lot of money just to buy the metal for, at worst, a bear or a drugged hippie. And a lot of power spent for, what? Floodlights to see anything coming at all angles? I asked Theodore, the boy's father and my employer, and he just says it's for extra security. Fair enough, what was I gonna do? Tell him he's being overly careful? I'm the kind of guy who sleeps with 5 knives in his room, the door locked, and one eye open. Still, wasn't the security that had me on edge. It was all the claw marks on the outside, that to me, were too violent to be from bears. So now that you know the details of my arrival here, things been weird. I know I said I'm a city slicker, near what? 3 decades in Chicago, put in the middle of the woods to guard some several hundred square feet in the middle of deep south woods. Surely, anyone would be unnerved. This place though, the town just a few miles down the forest road, the walls of hundreds of thousands of pine trees seemingly drowning any and all life in the endless veil of woods. I'm a man of this craft. Didn't always work in private security. I like the more combative jobs. I like working in this sort of boot and collar work, the warrior mentality. I've had to deal with a lot of people, hundreds of kinds. Druggies, dumbass, do you know who I am? Creepy motherfuckers sitting out by the dumpster with a boombox wearing socks. Just socks. Point is, I've experienced shit, a lot of shit. So when the sun started to go down, and the alarms in my head started to tick on, it's not bullshit. One of my jobs is to check the wall. Not too bad honestly, allows me to get out of the house, get some fresh air, skin a stone structure that'd make Eastern Berliners get flashbacks, and see the lights at night. Nothing too shabby. A week and I had to do actual maintenance on the wall as well. It was midday when I looked on the security cameras, and saw the eastern side had a spot, where some sort of matted fur was caught. Didn't see it the night before, so I grabbed some tools and hopped on the ATV over there. When I pried it off, some alarms went off in my head. 1. This shit was a pain in the ass to pry off because it made some body armor look like cardboard. 2. If it was this tough, how the hell did it get punctured by the defensive wire? 3. If this was animal skin like I thought, why was the inside as dry and laminated as, say, the underside of a carpet, but still had an organic skin look to it? Theodore said it's nothing, probably just a bear passed by, and some shed fur got caught on the wire. But it's nearing winter time, when the fur would be growing instead of shedding, and shed fur doesn't have a layer of skin on the inside. Put it in a crate in the security room for later inspection. Do you know what's truly creepy? Sure, a reptilian human bird guy with a Godzilla shriek running at you, at 1 million miles per hour, that can be scary. Do you know what's creepy? It's not the bullshit scary stories, it's not really, well, the movie monsters. It's the things that are out of place. I'm not an easily spooked man, but it's not the hobgoblin in the woods that'd freak me out, it's the little girl out in the middle of bumfuck nowhere. I was out on a full property check. I used to do this around, once every week, mostly because I wasn't used to the whole, well like I said, bumfuck miles of suffocating trees. But as I got more used to it, I started patrolling the land every 2 days. I climb on the ATV, I ride out the gates, and patrol the long, winding dirt path that the property manager agreed with whoever he bought it from to be his plot's perimeter. Usually I go, shoo off any nicks getting drunk, clear the occasional fallen brush. However, this path runs deep into the woods. I don't know how much Theodore paid for this land, but it runs miles before it loops back around. You ever take a walk into the woods, feel the calm silence, so tranquil, so undisturbed. In my experience, it's like you're sitting in a canoe, on a calm ocean bed. While still, all it takes for you to capsize in the fairly untamed, unsafe woods, is one push. One push, and you're drowning in panicking and paranoia. So when I drove up the ATV path, and stopped at what I had calculated was the most northern part of Theodore's plot, I took out my binoculars and gazed around. Calm tall grass growing and smothering the trunks of trees, and the trees, when you started passing the point of Theodore's land, it started growing more sparser. But there were still 100 per square foot. Really, this was just an excuse for me to stop, calm my nerves of the forest, and relax. What tipped me over was when I heard someone say woof. And I don't mean, it's just a fucking dog Dwight, you dumbass. I mean a grown fucking man literally saying meow, woof, and bark. In the middle of the fucking woods, and it was in the goddamn bright evening, and it still freaked me the fuck out. I gazed around, the noise was coming from the direction northwards, away from the property line. Hello? Woof, shit went from me cringing, to just goddamn confused. You're on private property dash, he was off the property, technically, but like I was gonna tell the creepy motherfucker that. Show yourself, now. A long pause. Meow. I let out a sigh, stop fucking around, show yourself, now. What happened next, made me immediately reach for the rifle on the back of my ATV. Directly to the right of my ATV, pointing at the point I knew was directly north of the house. Poked out a head. And I don't mean, like a head, a hairy fucker or some pedophile or some shit, who else fucks around in the woods like this, regardless. What poked out, was a completely blank head. Ever have those toys as kids, you fill the mold of that guy and pop him out? Imagine that, but on a much better, more defined scale. A male head, stripped of hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, fucking lips. The second it stuck out, it looked at me with what were white eyes and dilated pupils, and without even mouthing his barely open mouth went cuckoo, coo. It caused me to nearly trip and fall on my ass from the shock. I scrambled to my feet and aimed the rifle over the ATV. Using the small vehicle against cover from whatever the fuck this was. Come out, now! Nay. In retrospect, I now can guess he was making a horse's neigh, but I thought he was saying neigh in defiance, so I stood up and screamed, "Come the fuck out or I will fire." Yes, I was that trigger-happy security officer that those thrill-seeking teens ran into when they pushed the buttons of a rent-a-cop on duty. You can thank Iraq for that mentality. What I cannot thank Iraq for was preparing me for what the man did next. The guy crab walked, more so shuffled outwards sideways. You know in 2D cartoons, how they draw the crabs? He was like that, legs apart wide, hands up like fucking claws, and that god-awful face staring at me. He was also fucking naked. All I could let out was a what the fuck. Not gonna lie, I was in disbelief. Blink, he then turned 90 degrees north, and fucking shuffled at goddamn 50 miles per hour away. After a few meters, he disappeared into the thick brush. What the fuck? I've heard him, but never seen him since, and something told me Theodore brushing it off didn't put my mind at ease either. I started to get over seeing the random lights, the naked man, and the growing claw marks on the wall. Got used to it, I guess. Then, well, I met Tim a few nights ago. So one night, I was sitting in a security room. Essentially the outside-facing wall is a, wall of monitors. There's nothing much in the room. Table with a computer, mouse, and keyboard attached to the screens, the crate where I stuffed the fur along with any other things the cryptid Amazon users would buy up for $300 minimum. And a chair. Gets pretty boring actually. Log walls aren't furnished with a layer of plywood and plaster like the rest of the place, which gives off that piney smell and makes it strangely quiet. What broke the silence a few days ago was when I took a break from scanning empty monitors to listen to browse on my phone. HHHEAI. The voice echoed through the sound of the speakers. Caused a jump a bit too, dead of night, and went right from dead silence. I quickly scanned the monitors, trying to find the source. HHHHEAI. Nothing at the backside. Nothing in the main yard. Hey! HEEYYYYY. The voice sounded like it was halfway to cracking, then I decided to do what I should have done instead of my frantic screen searching. I checked the sound receivers and saw it was coming from the voice receiver at the front gate. Hey! Hey! My eyes darted to the camera overlooking the front gate, to see some kind of white figure with a metal pole. Wasn't too good of a look, so I switched it to the front gate cam. What I saw left me in surprise, not shocked, just baffled. A science room skeleton. Yes, a science room skeleton. The metal pole was actually the wheeled rack it was hanging off of. I sat there, surprised. I expected to see a serial killer? Hell, seeing the white figure from a distance made my mind go into emergency mode from reading off of too many Native American horror stories, but this? Hey! The voice called from the skeleton, or at least I thought it was. It was coming from the receiver, so it could very well have been just a decoy, and someone underneath it was yelling into it. I clicked on the speaker and called back. "You're on private property." A long silence followed. Broke up by HEY. HAY, a dead unmoving stare from the skeleton as it happened. What the fuck? What the fuck is this? Hey! Someone was trying to draw attention to the front gate. I signed and grabbed my rifle, but considering it would also be a close distance, I grabbed the Beretta from the locker under the table as well. I passed John, Theodore's son, as I passed by him and went for the front door. "John, head upstairs, lock yourself in your room." He sighed, turning his attention from playing some sort of game on his Xbox. Why? Some guy at the front gate, could be a perimeter breach attempt, no other signs of life except the front gate. John paused for a moment as I unlocked the door. His question caused me to pause. Is it a skeleton? I stopped, locking eyes with the 16-year-old. A second of silence passed, as a HEY escaped through the slight crack of the door. Possibly. That's just Tim. I blinked at the response, shaking my head slightly. Tim, dot. Yeah, Skeleton appears and just yells at the gate. Dad just tells me to ignore him and turn up the volume. That's highly unsafe. John simply looked confused, a silent why. There's a man out there screaming at the gate, causing an obvious distraction, and your dad just lets it fly? It's not a person. It's a skeleton, and Dad says to ignore the things that come around during the night. It's at this point I realize the parlor and all of the windows to ground level rooms that were too big for simple blinds were above eye level. Easier to avoid seeing things at night. Well, I'm going to go talk to Tim Dash. Don't. This made me stop at the door, because, well, the kid said the single word a lot sterner than I'd had any adult speak to me in the past 8 years? Why? It's how we lost Richie Dash for reference, they told me. Richie was a Rottweiler they had a few years back, went missing, father chummed it up to him running off after a bear. Dash guy was at our gate and Dad sicked him on him. Dash. I feel I knew the obvious truth, but I wasn't in the mood to hear the rest. Shaking my head as I headed out, I pressed the remote control for the gate I had clipped on my belt, and had it open. I took a firing position from the porch and watched as the reinforced sheets of steel and mechanics slowly wheeled open. Part of me thanks Theodore for all the lights. The woods out here are an impermeable wall of pitch black, suffocatingly so. So bright, it illuminated Tim even brighter than he was. But as soon as I saw him, one of those alarms went off in my head. You see, when the gates wheeled open, I remembered something. Tim was positioned just in front of the receiver, although a few meters from it. Point is, he was off to the right of the driveway. So when the gates opened up down the middle, the pitch black walls of trees showing themselves, there it was dead center in the middle of the gravel path. Dash. Tim cut off mid-sentence, when it opened wide enough for both of us to get a good look at each other. If it was a burglary distraction, would have been long enough, and an alarm would have been tripped if a sneak entry was tried. All I saw was me, aiming at what was a fucking science class skeleton, in the middle of the goddamn woods. Fuck me. I cut the pie of the gates, meaning, I first vaulted over the porch edge, and checked slowly on the right side to see if someone was hiding. Nothing. I checked the left side, keeping far enough to where they'd have a few meters run at me. Nothing. I stopped, my rifle barrel lowered, but still shouldered. Now here's the thing, the floodlights are so bright, if someone tried to hide, you'd be able to see them. Problem was, there was no one. Sitting there, staring off to the left side, when Tim started up again. Hey! I sighed, what in the ever-loving fuck is going on? Hey. I walked towards the gate, peeked around the corner of the wall, and stared out at him, Tim. At this point I did scans to the left and right side. No one. Nothing. Fucking zip. Just me and a goddamn skeleton. The quickly cooling night air allowed me to see my breath. I quickly gazed around, trying to see where the moon was. Near midnight. Narc. I spun around and backed up a few paces. Did the skeleton just call me a narc? I lowered my barrel when I realized I was aiming at a fucking skeleton, but in retrospect, I shouldn't be so careful. I gazed at the thing for a few moments, gazing at it. I decided to say fuck it, and went up to him. It was indeed a skeleton, and a bare one at that. No wires, no cameras, no voice speakers. Nothing. I thought it might be built into the stand. But the pipe seemed to be hollow, and it didn't sound like it was coming from a metal pipe. I backed up from Tim, once again asking myself, confidently, what the actual fuck? Strangely, I expected this to be the point where something jumped out, scared me and forced a hasty retreat into the compound estate's walls. But nothing. Not a shadow out in the dark wall. Not a pale, white, crab-walking, back-flipping deformed man. Not a goddamn thing. Hey narc. Nice scare. I turned my head back to Tim, and then backed up a few steps more. I was staring leftwards before he said that. On the right side of my face is a scar, a long gash, although not too noticeable if you're close. You'd have to be close if you didn't know it was already there. And Tim was around the distance you'd need to be. There were no cameras on it, how could anyone see? No speakers, so no way someone could be speaking through it. And yet it just gave me a compliment about a facial mutilation. What the fuck did you just say? I asked, sound unintentionally offended. It was really more out of stunned confusion. The skeleton did not answer. Whatever was going on, whoever was doing this, it was fucking with me, so I parted ways with Tim with a nice crack to the skeleton's jaw, courtesy of my rifle's stock, and walked back in, hitting the button as the gates slowly closed. Between the sound of the gates closing and the engines forcing them to slide shut, I heard one parting message from Tim. Asshole. Went back out the next day, Tim was gone. Still don't believe a skeleton talked to me yesterday, seems so fucking stupid in retrospect, and yet matched the atmosphere in a strange way. Now, it's been a few weeks, that's some of the shit I've encountered. There's been a lot going on, and I've decided to do what every one person encountering paranormal elements with too much excess time has. Document it online, or, well, blog it I guess. Post? Getting off track. Point is, I've got plenty of things to tell. So when I get back to this shitty laptop, you'll be the first to hear.